All right, everyone, thanks for being tuned in on time. Welcome to tonight's webinar, Lessons from the Land, the first of our series, the Sheep Producer session. Tonight, we'll be hearing from 3 New South Wales sheep producers about their sheep operations, their experiences managing through drought, and some of the lessons they've learned along the way. My name is Ella Barney, and I'm a Drought Adoption Officer with the New South Wales Local Land Services. This webinar is brought to you by the Drought Adoption Officer program, which has received funding through the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund, through the Southern New South Wales Innovation Hub and the Southern Queensland Northern New South Wales Innovation Hub. So Local Land Services acknowledges that it stands on country that always was and always will be Aboriginal land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and waters, and we show our respect for elders past, present and emerging. We are committed to providing places in which Aboriginal people are included socially, culturally and economically through thoughtful and collaborative approaches to our work. So just a bit of housekeeping for tonight. This session is being recorded and it will be available later on our YouTube channel to view. We encourage everyone to ask questions throughout the session. Use the Q&A function on the control panel of your screen and just include which producer panelist you're directing your question toward, and we'll work through those at the end. At the conclusion of tonight's webinar, please fill out our post-event survey. We really do value your feedback and this helps us to deliver the content that you'd like to see in the future. So to introduce tonight's panellists, first we will hear from Tom McGuinness. Tom, alongside his wife Georgie, operate McGuinness Farms, a self-replacing commercial merino enterprise on their properties Clonalton, Frogmore, Bigger Station in Bigger and Baranga near Barooa. The properties consist of a total area of around 5,000 hectares and run approximately 30 to 40,000 head of sheep. McGuinness Farms also runs 1,000 head of beef, cattle, and Tom will talk us through how he plans for dry seasons and utilises livestock data and trigger points to aid decision making. Then we will hear from Richard Taylor, who is the Managing Director of McLaughlin River Pastoral Co., a family farming business based at Nimbidabel on the eastern Monero. The business runs a 25 to 30,000 head merino flock, 12 to 14,000 crossbred ewes and a 3,000 cow breeding herd. Richard is a veterinarian by training, the founder and director of Growth Farms, a farm management company operating approximately $1 billion worth of farmland in Eastern Australia. Richard is also the current chairman of Farming Forecaster, and tonight Richard will be talking about his experiences managing through droughts and discuss some of his drought management strategies with us. And thirdly, we will hear from Sam Evans, who is a 5th generation farmer based at Walgett. Sam runs a mixed farm enterprise that includes a 3,000 head self-replacing doonie herd, 600 Angus cows, and 10,000 hectares of cropping used to produce grain, fodder, and for backgrounding. Tonight, Sam will talk to us about the role of stored feed for drought preparedness and the way that livestock data informs his drought decision making. So Tom, welcome to tonight's webinar, and you're going to start us off. So to give us a bit more information about you, can you tell us a bit about your farms and provide an overview of the main drought management strategies that you've utilised on your properties during dry seasons?
Yes, thanks Ella, and thanks for having me here. I feel very lucky to be asked to do this, especially amongst the company of other producers we have on this panel. So yeah, very much feel like I'm lucky to be amongst this crowd. But look, to give you a little bit of background, we're an all livestock grazing business, predominantly based on merino ewes and some beef cattle. We are predominantly a merino self-replacing flock, producing fine wool, and I guess that's our priority, and we do that because it suits our land class and our general environment. We have used a lot of different drought strategies over the years, and I think one of the things that came up when I had a bit of a chat to you earlier, Ella, was in the short term I've been farming, well, it probably spans nearly 3 decades now. I haven't seen 2 years the same, and I think that's really important because it's difficult to have a drought strategy that you just pull out of the plan out and go with it, because every year is different. You have to have, I guess, a series of decisions that are made along the way that allow you to put yourself in the best possible position according to a lot of different things that are going on around you. And that ability to make those decisions, I think, is the critical part. I always believe that decision making is the key to drought management. And sometimes you've got to make multiple decisions a day, sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a month, but you just have to keep making good decisions. Main drought strategies, I guess we look at, we weigh up feeding, selling, adjusting, sometimes using all three, but it seems like we always seem to end up going down the path of pretty much always feeding. We've just found that it's important to try and keep a core breeding flock in place or herd, and the economics of that have sort of always added up. I think the other thing that I was thinking about our drought strategy is just investing in good infrastructure and plant and equipment around feeding. So that's something that's ongoing, and we're not there yet, but we try and invest in, good grain storage, augers, feed carts, those sorts of things. So there's a little bit of a, I guess, introduction into, some of the stuff we're doing.
Great, thanks, Tom. So you were involved in a Tokau case study, and in that case study, you talked about having clear drought plans in place with established trigger points so that you can act early. So can you walk us through those trigger points that help you decide when to start feeding when things start to get dry?
Well, we base our whole system on a lot of feed budgeting. So we're trying to assess how many kilos of dry matter per hectare or across the farms, on a sort of a whole farm basis all the time. And I guess we know that it's because we're budgeting that we can measure how much is there at the time, how much we're going to utilise, how much we might be going to grow in a certain amount of time. We can always see where the deficits are going to occur before they do. So we've got it on our radar as something that's probably going to happen. That's when we start to think about, okay, well, how do we manage that? I think it's a combination of, different processes. So we're looking at measuring how many kilos are in the paddock across the farm at the time, how long will it last, the condition of the animals, what condition score they're in, do they have surplus condition that we can run off them over a certain amount of time, or are they actually probably light, lower condition score than what we'd like them at the time. So we know that we don't have that luxury of running condition off animals. The time of year is another critical thing. Like, are we talking we've had a failed spring? Are we just talking about a couple of months coming out of the, end of winter or the end of autumn, those types of things. And then also we consider, I guess, the general forecast and the outlook for rain, because I know a lot of forecasting and bureau and stuff got a lot of flack about their ability to forecast, but there's certainly are tools out there to give you a lot of information about what's happening, and you can understand the risks a little bit better if you just take note of some of those outlooks and forecasts that are out there.
Great, thanks, Tom. And how do you use financial analysis to inform those decisions that you're making both before and during drought? So what are some of the key financial measures that you think producers should understand before they're making those decisions around whether to feed, adjust or sell?
Oh, well, I think we could try and keep it pretty simple, and we don't get too in depth, because it's predicting the future is always difficult. But we tend to just take a few simple things into account. We look at the value of the animal in its current state, and that gives us a sort of a benchmark of a starting point of what it's worth to feed these animals. From there, we can look at the feed costs of buying in. We buy in all our grain, so we don't grow any feed ourselves at all. It's all bought in. So I guess we look at the cost to keep the animal, and that may be keeping it in full feed ration, it may be keeping it with a supplementary ration, or it may be the cost of adjustment using someone else's grass to retain ownership of that animal. And I guess we look at the sell value of the animal at the time to see what it is. Historically, we've always found that in our area, we're often the last ones to go into these dry periods. So by the time we get there, the value of the animals has dropped significantly. So selling is always going to be the difficult choice. I think we then sort of put all that together and make a decision. And once we've made that decision, we'll say, okay, it's going to cost us so much per head or per DSE to feed for a certain amount of time, which we believe is the time till the chance of the next break. That might be 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. We then work out that cost. I guess we then commit to that program and say, okay, we're all happy with this. This is what we're going to do. Let's do it. And once that decision's made, it's just a process of doing it, implementing, filling silos, making sure we have grain on hand, getting the feed budget sorted, understanding the nutritional requirements of the animals, so we're meeting those targets and then measuring it. So we're weighing animals, we're assessing them condition score, just seeing if they're actually maintaining the condition there that we're aiming for, or meeting targets along the way. And we don't overcomplicate it, we keep it simple. But we do feel once you've made the decision and committed to it, it's easy to implement. It's just sort of, if you go in half-assed and try and, not sure what you're going to do, but you'll start off doing a bit and then it ramps up, and then and you're sort of committed to something you're not comfortable with, it always gives you a headache. So we try and commit early. I think we do look at the projected animal value of the animal at the break, and that mostly gives us a lot of confidence around feeding, because we can see that even the cost of this period that we've been through, which for us was very tough over autumn, the value of those animals coming out of it is well outweighed the cost of us doing it on a DSE basis. I think the other thing that we use, which is great, really simple for us, is the New South Wales DPI app on drought feeding. Everyone has it on their phone. It's a simple process to work out, how many kilos certain animal classes are needing on a per daily basis to maintain or, meet a certain requirement. And we found that a great tool to utilise when feeding, a lot of animals over 3 farms.
Is that the drought and supplementary feed calculator, Tom?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, great. Yes, if anyone who doesn't know, that's available on the web, and also you can download it as an app. It's a pretty handy tool to have.
It's a great tool.
So
really
Tom, talking about measuring animals and making those decisions, you've mentioned that you use EIDs in your operation to collect data and to create an index for your use. So how do you use this data to inform your decision making when things do get dry and you're deciding whether you're going to destock or not?
Look, I better put a little add note to that statement, in that we actually haven't been able to do that for the last couple of years, just because we've probably focused more on our cost of production and our labour efficiencies, and that's something that was one of the things that sort of dropped out of our system. I think it's coming back in this year. We're collecting more data this year, where we'll go back into indexing all our ewes again. But we had a system in place which was great, because we're running a merino self-replacing flock alongside a dual purpose flock. So we're joining merino ewes to a terminal sire. And by indexing those ewes, when we were, questioning which ewes to feed, we were probably trying to focus on our best genetics. If we're looking to sell anything or to utilise that terminal side of the block to reduce our merino lamb numbers going forward. We would just utilise that index to decide which ewes would either sell or join to a terminal. And so it was a simple case. All those ewes would have fibre diameter, fleece weight, and body weight record. They would just all be indexed internally. So every ewe of an age would be indexed from the best ewe, number 1, to what would be the lowest indexing ewe, might be 3,000 or 4,000. And then we would just say, okay, let's just join the top 2,500 indexing ewes to a merino. The others would go, the next 1,000 would go to a terminal. The bottom ones would get sold. And we would literally run those through an auto draft, and it would all happen automatically once we set those parameters up. And we found that a great tool to understand, not just diving in and going, we need to unload some animals here, we're just going to go in and sell the oldest ones. We probably try to be a bit more strategic around which animals we're keeping, which are our highest value animals, and why we would choose to feed those for long periods.
Sure. Thank you. So talking about managing through those long dry stretches, when you were doing that, what helped you to keep turning up each day? And were there any routines or habits that helped you stay motivated during those drought periods?
Oh, look, that is such a hard question, because there is no doubt that when you're in the middle of it and you're driving around through dust and you're hot and you're constantly just feeding animals day after day, it wears you down. And I think management of the people in the system I class it as more difficult than managing the animals. I've always found that keeping people's motivation up, keeping them interested in the job, keeping myself focused and interested is the number one challenge, because once you have a plan in place, the animal part's easy. It is difficult. And look, I just think the way to do it is have a good plan, keep it, lighthearted. Don't get too stressed over it. Just, enjoy, have a bit of a laugh with people every time you see them, and try and keep people motivated and upbeat, and understand that it doesn't last forever. And I think when you're in the middle of it, it feels like it's never going to rain, but we always know it does. And you've just got to remember that I think one of the tools I found great, and I would recommend this to anyone, is take photos. Take photos of when it's your best year, take photos of your worst. So you have reminders. You can go back on your phone or wherever you may keep those photos. And when you're driving around the drought feeding, you can just flick back and look in that paddock and think, hang on, it doesn't always look like this. Sometimes it looks fantastic. I think in the same way, sometimes you need those little reminders when things are going really well too, just so you think, hang on, I've got to make good decisions now, because this won't last forever. And I need to be prepared for when, things do change. But I've found that a great way of just keeping motivated and understanding that it's just cyclical. It changes. So don't get too wound up in the moment. Understand that you just, there's a bigger picture involved.
Great, thank you. And you've talked about managing people and that potentially being a little more tricky than the animal side of things. So what is your process for involving your team, your family, your advisors in the decision making during droughts, and how do you make sure that those decisions are collectively understood and executable within your team?
Yeah, I think information, is the one thing that we try and focus on. Is we provide, I guess, we try and allow everyone to understand the plan and have a bit of input in the plan. So we'll be constantly talking about the targets that certain animal groups have as far as their condition or weight gain or maybe weight loss or whatever it may be. We try and really inform everyone in the business as to what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. And then I think that allows them to make better decisions on the ground as to, you know, what they're doing and why and how they may change it. And I guess come back to us with ideas or with, you know, commentary about what's happening. Again, I think it's really great to have some sort of platform. We use WhatsApp, which is just a, you know, standard phone app of sharing a lot of information. So within the group, we can share, you know, photos of what's happened, you know, kilos of dry matter on the ground. You know, it might be a bit of a stuff up you've had, you know, share it around. It gives people a bit of a laugh. I think, yeah, information flow is the main one. And we don't tend to use a lot of advisors or anything in our business. I think we understand the key principles, and I certainly have a really strong, I guess, core group of mentors around me, and I rely on them heavily, always giving them a call, just, you know, sharing information with them, what I'm doing, what they're doing. And I find that the best way to clear your head around, I guess, bottlenecks in your business or your strategy is just sharing what's going on with you. And more often than not, people are going through the same thing. And one thing I've learned is that the best farmers are also the best sharers of information. They never hold anything back. They're happy to give you all the information you ever want if you're willing to ask. And I think that's, you know, another way of understanding where you're at the moment, is making sure that you're talking to, you know, mentors, peers, whatever it is around you, so that, you know, you feel like you're in a good headspace. Because once you share that moment, I think it relieves it, and, you know, everyone else, you know, soon understand, I'm not the only one doing this. It's you know, everyone else is in the same boat. So
Thanks, Tom.
I think that's our way of managing that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Tom. That's all the questions I've got for you tonight. So thank you for sharing the role of that communication and shared experiences with your mentors. It's really great to hear. So if anyone does have questions that they'd like to address to Tom, you can just pop them in the Q&A function, and we will come back to them at the end. So next we're going to have a chat to Richard Taylor. So Richard, to get us started, can you give us a bit of an overview about your property and walk us through some of the key strategies that you've used during drought periods to keep things running?
Okay, thanks, Ella, and I'd echo Tom's sentiments. I'm really feel very privileged to be part of the discussion here tonight. Droughts, I've been farming longer than these other guys, I think, but drought is, you know, pretty close to the heart of any farmer, and it is a very emotional and important topic. And my observation over my years are very defining times for farm businesses. So getting them right is really important to the long-term success of a business. So, but we're based on the Monero, on the eastern Monero. For those of you in the north of the state, it's probably the closest thing to it is the eastern side of the New England. So we get summer rain, coastal rain, really. So a bit like Tom said, we're on the eastern side of the state, and we tend to be the last into a drought and a last out. And it's got the reputation of being a pretty tough place, mainly because it's quite high. So we're 1,000 metres above sea level. But one of the good things about it is we're close to much softer places. So while 80% of our country's on the Monero, we've got some country down in the Bega Valley, which is only 30 k's to our east. And we've got country over in the Upper Murray, just on the western side of the divide. But all the properties are within sort of 350 kilometres. So one of our drought strategies is actually to be able to move stock around. But I'm based on the Monero, and that's where the majority of our sheep are and the majority of the business. The cattle, I think, are relevant, though, even though we're not talking about cattle tonight. But we do move the cattle around and we do have adjustment options with them, whereas our sheep flock are closed flocks. And just because of disease risk issues, we're not prepared to adjust them. So it's a bit limiting, but given cattle are 40% of our DSEs, we can shuffle them around a bit and move them between properties. Given that we sort of last in and last out of droughts, but we're also reasonably high rainfall. So across the properties, we'd average about 800 mil of rainfall. I think, like Tom, when we do the sums, it always pays us to keep the great majority of our stock. We can't sell them in front of everybody else. The droughts tend to come across from the west. So by the time we know we're in drought, stock prices have already collapsed generally. And then we tend to come out of them later too. And so by the time we can buy back in, prices tend to have escalated pretty well. So, we do the numbers, but invariably the approach is to maintain at least all our breeding flock and herd. And in reality, we need to be operating with at least 80% of our sort of long-term stock numbers. If we get below that, we're just not profitable.
Right.
So we're really focusing on keeping our stock. And I guess to do that, we've set things up. And a lot of the way we set the business up is actually to manage drought, because as I said, I think it's just so important. So we set up to finish everything. So to take our lambs up to 55 kilos. So that gives us flexibility in a drought that we can bail out of them early. So one of the first things we do is sort of bail out earlier in that production cycle. So that obviously we take a hit on that in the year we do it, but it doesn't affect next year's production.
Great. Thanks, Richard.
Yeah.
So running the large number of sheep that you do, can you share a time where a particular feeding strategy or a management decision made a real difference to the efficiency and the time spent completing those day-to-day tasks that you have to do every day during a drought?
Well, I think there's sort of probably been incremental changes. Tom mentioned infrastructure, and that's been a big one. And on the place we're on here, we've got sort of 6 different silo sites with augers and so on, just to minimise the time taken to feed, because a lot of it's just about manageability. The other thing that we do now is just have pretty well everything on the property has been trained to eat grain. Like Tom, grain's our feed supply in a drought. We don't produce any, we've got to bring it all in. But if you go into a drought here and your animals are not trained to eat grain, then you've just got a massive job to get them onto it. So we tend to imprint feed our lambs before we wean them. And, if 80% of the stock on the property are not trained to eat grain, then I reckon I'm in trouble.
Okay, great. Thank you. So are there any particular tools or systems that you use during a drought to aid decision making? And how do you balance the use of these tools with your own instinct and experience from being in the game as long as you have? So, are there tools such as farming forecaster that you've used, other long range forecasts? What do you tend to utilise?
Well, I've got to declare a bit of a conflict of interest here, Ella, that I'm sort of chairing farming forecaster at the moment. But that's actually the tool I use most. As Tom mentioned about the seasonal forecasts, and they are getting better, but the real value of farming forecaster is it puts the known things in there. And so the known things, how much soil moisture you've got now, what your pasture availability is, your stock condition, and they actually have a really big impact on what your feed supply is going to look for the next 3 or 4 months. So having them in your projections sort of going forward, I find really useful. So that's something I'd look at, at least every week when I'm in it, when the season's getting difficult.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about managing sheep through drought, it definitely involves some tough calls. Can you tell us about one of the hardest decisions you've had to make during a drought?
Well, I saw that question you gave to me, Ella, and I'm not sure I can, because I'm not very good at making heroic decisions. I tend to make really incremental decisions, because sort of the situation's changing, on a weekly basis, really. And I think when we're really going into a drought, that we're making a bit of a new plan, or we're revising the plan every week. So I mean, it's always hard, and it's much harder when you're in a drought than it is looking back at it, because when you're looking back at it, you know what the end point was, and the hardest thing about being in a drought is not knowing when it's going to end. And obviously that, if you knew when it was going to end, that would make your decisions a lot easier. But I think whenever you're making a big call in terms of either, getting out of stock early. So we, in that 1920 summer, we sold a lot of crossbred lambs at under 25 kilos, but, they were still worth $100 or so at the time. But, you're actually taking a big hit, but you're doing it to preserve the rest of your breeding flock or herd. So I think all those decisions are hard. I think, bringing animals into confinement feeding is always hard. It's a big commitment, but, it's what we do as things get tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it does come to making those tough calls like destocking or holding off on investing or putting those animals into confinement feeding, who do you normally lean on for advice and support? And do you have any advisors, family or peers, mentors, like Tom mentioned, that you trust in those moments?
Yeah, I guess, I sort of developed a real peer group. Also, generally, we have a pretty strong Monero farming group and a benchmarking group here. And I guess they're a farming peer group. I've also got a very close friend who's got a business that's very similar size to me. And, we'd talk at least weekly in those situations. I think just sharing information, as Tom said, is really helpful. But having said all that, I think you've got to be prepared to do things differently too. My view about ag is the average returns generated in ag are pretty low, and if you're not prepared to do things differently, then you're never going to shoot the lights out. So I think it's great to talk to other people and so on, but I think you also got to be prepared to do things your own way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So when we're talking about managing through a drought, it does take a big toll on anyone who's going through that. And so what have you learned about looking after your own headspace during those times? And is there anything that you do differently next time around?
What do I do? I think procrastination's a real killer. So, I said we make incremental decisions. So you're just constantly making decisions and not putting them off. And I always feel better when I've made them. Whereas if you're procrastinating, it can be quite crippling. So, yeah, get on with it, make decisions. I think having realistic expectations is important. I mean, I'm not a perfectionist, but I reckon if you were a perfectionist, droughts would be really difficult because, things tend to get pretty untidy in a drought. And I think you've just got to be realistic about that. In fact, in my early farming days, an old farmer next door, I think probably the first drought I went into, and he said, you just got to think of drought like a war. He said, there'll be a few casualties, but most people will get through it. And I think, so you've just got to be realistic. Think, some things will go wrong, but keep your eye on the main game and just keep working through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So has managing your properties through droughts influenced how you prepare for the next one? So in what ways has it made you more cautious or hesitant? And in what ways and areas have you focused on building resilience?
Well, as I said, I think, drought management has been a real focus in how we set the whole business up. So, having the infrastructure in place, good water systems, good feeding systems, decent tracks around the place to make things efficient. Also, I think, knowing you've got the finance in place. I think the worst time to go to the bank is when you're in the middle of a drought and things are tough. We always have a bit of headspace there in our financial capacity, and by capacity I mean borrowings. We don't have the capital on hand, and we pay a bit of a line fee to have that, but I know that we've got a bit of a margin there to get us through a drought, and that just makes decision making a lot easier, I think. Yeah, and I think in terms of resilience, pastures, our pasture sowing decisions are based on pastures that will survive drought. So I think really in a lot of ways it flows right through into all our property planning and infrastructure decisions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Richard. So that's all the questions that I had for you tonight. So thank you for your insights and your advice. So once again, if anyone has any questions that they'd like to direct towards Richard, please pop them in that Q&A function and we will come back to them. So lastly, we are going to hear from Sam Evans. So Sam, thanks for coming along tonight. So to give us a little bit more information about you, can you give us a bit of information about your properties, Martindale and Netherby, and give us some insight into the farming operation that yourself and your family run there?
Thanks, Ella. Thanks for having me. Yeah, very privileged to be amongst some other very talented farmers by the sounds of it. So thank you. Just a quick insight. Yeah, based up at Walgett. Seems to be a very good season at the moment, but doesn't last forever. But no, we run a 3,000 head Dooney self-replacing herd, 600 Angus cows between sort of here and another property at Tambar Springs. And yeah, 10,000 hectares of cropping that we use for mostly grain production, but we also do a bit of backgrounding and a bit of our own fodder crop from time to time.
Great, thank you. So I know that you've got a bit of a feedlot set up on your place. So can you tell us a little bit about that feedlot and the reasons that you chose to invest in feedlot infrastructure and how it fits into your drought management plan?
Yeah, no worries. It was obviously during the drought there was many challenges along the way, and lessons to be learned. And yeah, we just sort of looked into it, did the sums on it, and we tried all the other avenues, agistment, and paddock feeding, everything else. It just sort of the time management was probably our biggest thing. Having them contained and you can see everything and monitor everything a lot closer. So we set up the feedlot, and it was it's been a good thing for us what we've done so far, and we still today use it. We will use it for weaning lambs as well, off mum if conditions aren't right. We can also utilise that as well.
Yep, that's great. So when things do get dry, what are the indicators that you're monitoring to decide when you're going to start supplementary feeding?
Definitely the ground cover. That's our biggest thing. As a lesson, probably coming out of the back of sort of 2017 to 2020. Sort of we went and did a few courses during that period, grazing for profit and a few. And ground cover definitely is our number one. That's one of my biggest things I'd like to retain in order to try and avoid to see the place what it looked like last time. And then obviously livestock condition, you can still have ground cover, but the quality of feed just isn't there. So that's one of our main indicators too. And then obviously timing, whether we're coming up to joining, lambing, whatever, we'll be condition scoring our ewes and making an assessment on that and having a plan and going from there.
Great. So Sam, when you're talking about the dry matter out in the paddocks, do you have particular numbers that you work off or any particular tools that you use to make that call, or do you just sort of know your place and make your decisions based off that?
Bit of both. Yeah, I did start to use some tools, some apps and some other things which they were good at the time and definitely worth doing it, but learn a few things along the way. They probably weren't as accurate as what I would have liked, but it still can't beat driving around and knowing your place for yourself and what's there and the quality of it. You can't beat that as well as a backup, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So one thing that we've chatted about is the fact that you utilise EIDs across your whole flock. So can you tell us about the experiences that led to that decision?
Yep. No, after on the back of, we started in 2019, started rolling out the EIDs. Had another farmer mate that had started with a bloke from Anthony Shepherd with Sheep Matters. And yeah, we sort of got involved with that. And basically what I wanted to get out of it was, if we got dry again, I wanted to know that we were feeding our most productive animals. So, and they're only as good as what you put into it. So we've been collecting data since then, across all our herds. So we're now, EID across the whole flock, which has been really good. So fanning, wet and dry, fleece weighing, and it's given us results. Our lambing rate has gone from 96% up to sort of 142%, and we're actually at the moment running less ewes than what we ever had, and still getting more lambs. So, which has been really good. And then obviously the ram selection has been the other big one for us. Quite always trying to pick multiples. I don't know whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing, but we always try and select multiple born rams, and so far we're getting pretty good results out of it.
Yeah, great. So you've mentioned some of the type of data that you collect on your sheep, but how does that data influence the decisions around destocking? So are you destocking those less productive animals, and how are you ranking those animals to determine who stays and who goes?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely we can put an index in wherever we want, so we can keep all our most productive, best fleece weighing, scan twins, red twins, for the however 3-4 years. So that's definitely the biggest thing for us.
Yep, great, thank you. So we're going to just look at the video that you've given me, just to mix it up for everyone a little bit. So while this video plays, can you just tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here?
Yep. So these are two of the grain pits. So we vary, there'll be 400 tonne of either barley or oats in these pits. They're about, what are they, 10 by 6 by 50 metres long. And that's basically as deep as that excavator will dig it. We line these pits with tarps, fold the tarp out the side, and then fill it with grain. And once the grain's in there, fill it above ground level, fold the tarps back over, and basically chuck dirt on it. And as soon as we need that, it's at a ready, and it's not tying up a silo sort of in the mix with our grain production.
Yep.
And has been a good thing so far.
Yeah, so during previous droughts, you've fed out barley and oats that have been stored at the time since 2010 and 2011. So can you tell us a little bit about this experience of feeding out that buried feed, and whether burying grain is still part of your drought preparedness strategy?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. We actually only buried some more last year. And we're currently just restocked our hay shed as of today, actually. But no, we will always have basically 12 months feed on hand at all times, because we're 450 mil rainfall, so we know it's gonna get dry. It's so we're always ready. And like you say, like the others have said, you just got to be adaptable. Things never 2 years the same, and that's what we try to aim for.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. So looking back at some of those major droughts that you have managed through, is there a particular moment or a decision that stands out as a turning point for you, either practically on your properties or personally?
27 months straight feeding was a pretty big one. Tom did mention it before, like, you've got to have photos for sure, of the good times and remember what it is like. But you go from the dust storms, like the one in one of those photos there, that was, I think from memory, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and ended up inside, and it was just pitch black at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And yeah, you sort of think, yeah, there's got to be something better than this, but then you realise that it's only for hopefully a short time, and you've just got to manage it and adapt as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So based on your experience, what advice would you give to other producers about balancing those practical demands of managing the farm through drought, whilst also looking after themselves and their mental well-being?
Definitely, yeah. We have a drought plan now. That's the biggest thing. If you've got something set before it actually happens, it takes you a lot. Yeah, it's a lot easier to make better decisions before you're in the thick of it. So yeah, like the triggers, to destock or adjust, or to sell the less productive ones. Yeah, if you've always got that plan ready to go and you can adapt in whichever way you need to go, it's always good. And I think probably one of the other things we learned from the drought too was to even get off farm. You didn't have to go, obviously not going on many holidays when you're drought feeding, but even if it was catching up with a neighbour for a coffee, or lunch at a pub or something like that. It's just all those little things that add up to help you get through it. And probably another one I would say was probably finding some new hobbies. I think was another good one. Just make little projects, or set goals, and yeah, next thing you know, there's a forecast on the way, and hopefully it's a decent one.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So speaking about, looking forward to when that forecast does change, how is it that you maintain focus on your long-term goals, such as genetic improvement in your flock or your long-term productivity, whilst you're, managing through the thick of survival mode during a drought?
Yeah, well, I think we're probably already in having the EID set up, already rolling out before the drought actually hits. I think now is the biggest thing for us, because our main focus is on that productivity already. So you've got your plan in place that stays dry for so long. We can sell these bottom performers. In order to feed these, you can only join the top half of the performers. Like, you've got options that you wouldn't have had if we hadn't have acquired all that data along the way. And then, yeah, I think that was about it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. So last one for you. What is a lesson that the drought has taught you, or a drought has taught you, that you now apply every day in your farm management, even when you're experiencing a good season?
No, definitely the photos is probably the biggest thing for me. I would agree with Tom on that one. You've got to see the best of both, and it's a reminder when it's good, and a reminder when it's what it can be like at the other end. And yeah, just to find that happy medium. And yeah, as well as, it's a work-life balance as well, finding that. And I sort of had kids during the drought as well, so that was they're a pretty good time waster and a good distraction as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And like Tom and Richard mentioned, they both mentioned having mentors. Is that something that you also had during the drought, and something that someone you bounced ideas off or asked questions of during those times?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot. We're probably pretty fortunate. There's a really good crowd of, say, young farmers in this area, sort of like the next generation coming through, with a lot of new ideas, fresh ideas, and as well as using the ones previous to us as well, which you always need that. But no, that definitely, there's a lot.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right, so that's all the questions I've got for you, Sam, tonight. So thank you for sharing your experiences and your thoughts and your advice. It's much appreciated. So we're now going to move on to the question section for tonight. So we have had a few questions come through the Q&A. So the first one is directed towards Tom. So Tom, if you want to come off mute for me. So Jeff has asked, hi Tom, how often do you meet as a management team and review what you've mentioned as your plan or the plan?
Oh, we're not very great. We're not very good at having structure around that. I've got to say, I'd like to think that we'd be better at that, but it tends to be fairly loose as around timing. But I think, so we don't have a structured, like, you know, Monday morning toolbox meeting or something like that. We tend to more catch up when we can with our team. So I'll often get around the different farms and be, you know, seeing everyone on the ground, making sure everything's going all right, or I'll be there trying to, you know, fill in while, you know, other jobs are going on or something. So unfortunately, I feel a bit guilty to say we don't have much structure around that, probably something we need to improve on. But I think that sharing of constant information is really important. And by that, you know, it can be a simple message on a, you know, WhatsApp group or something that can share an idea or a problem. Suddenly we can all come together and, you know, work out what the problem is and how to fix it quite quickly. And, you know, I think that's the great thing about technology, that we're, you know, we often complain now how much we have to be available, but it also means that, you know, sharing of information is so easy, and you know, you can pick up your phone at any moment and, you know, quickly read a message, look at something, get back to that person, you know, and add value, I think. So that's probably more the way we strategize around that. I think the big strategy stuff, we probably catch up, I would say, once every 2 to 3 weeks, and just have, you know, a quick discussion around, maybe longer than that, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, actually. The more I think about it, time gets away. But, you know, we'll get together and just have a bit of a chat about, you know, how's it going? Are we meeting the targets? Is this where we thought we'd be? You know, how do we all feel this is going?
Yep, yeah, for sure. Thank you, Tom. So the next one's directed towards Richard. So Kate's asked, hi Richard, you said that you choose pastures that survive drought. What are those particular species, and how do you try to maintain good ground cover during a dry season?
Well, Phalaris is really sort of the mainstay. We have lucerne pastures too, but in terms of our long-term pastures, we're using Phalaris, and typically have used sort of Holdfast and Australian, but using Holdfast GT now, and it's pretty indestructible up here. In terms of the second part, ground cover, yeah, again, that's critical for us. And so we're moving to confinement feeding as ground cover starts to get down towards critical levels. Yeah, and it's one of the big changes since I've been in ag, that, you know, when I started in ag, no one used confinement feeding. Now the great majority of farmers I know do, and it's been a really positive thing for ag.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Richard,
Yep.
for that one. So our next one, I think this one was directed towards Sam, as it came in during your chat. So Jamie Lee says, it's great to hear that EIDs are being utilised for farm management decisions. What is your program of choice for analysing that data and making decisions based on the data?
We use AgriWeb at the moment. Probably not as good as what we should. It's hard finding one across all enterprises, especially the cropping and livestock ones are the two. We basically need 2 separate ones, which we do have sometimes. But yeah, AgriWeb at the moment is our main one that we use on that front.
Thanks, Sam. The next one's actually directed towards you as well, so you can stay with me. So Kate's asked, how many tonnes will fill one of those pits that we saw in the video, and roughly how much time does it take to get through feeding out a pit that size when you're feeding it out in your confinement feeding setup?
Right, they're about 400 tonnes, 450 tonnes each, those pits, and normally once we open them, we'll pull the whole lot out and put it in a silo. Only because sometimes you get a bit of dirt fall back into the pit, so therefore you've got to either grade some of it or use a strainer of some description just to hold the clods of dirt.
Great, thanks, Sam. The next one was actually directed towards everyone, so I might just go through everyone individually. So if Sam, you're happy to start. So Brian's asked if you benchmark your farms alongside any other farms in the area or with similar properties across New South Wales, looking at things like dry sheep equivalent, soil type, moisture, pasture, yields, rainfall, etc.
Yep, certainly have. I only last year finished a course benchmarking with a group with 7 other farmers. Similar size farms, all mixed enterprise, and yeah, it was very interesting process, and yeah, certainly got a lot out of it, and some great ideas bounced around back and forth.
Great, thanks. So we might go to Tom next if you want to answer that one. So just to say it again, so do you benchmark your farms alongside any other farms in your area or similar farms across New South Wales, looking at things like soil type, pasture, yields, etc.?
Yes, we do. We benchmark our farms, our business, and I personally believe it is the most important part of our business. That whole process, that understanding what the key drivers of profitability are in your business, and then achieving results by understanding what those drivers are is absolutely critical. And so by being able to compare ourselves to other businesses and you know, a broad range of businesses in our area is critical. And we have a really strong benchmarking group that I'm a part of, as well as, you know, I've put in our data from our farm into a benchmarking group for a fair while now. And I just think it's so important. I can't believe that it isn't something that isn't top of the list of every farming business, in my opinion.
Great, thank you, Tom. So Richard, if you're happy to give your thoughts on the same question.
Yeah, well, I shared Tom's sentiments. We're probably not, we don't do it every farm every year. We sort of move in and out of it a bit, but we've got quite a strong benchmarking group on the Monero. It's part of, you know, what was Home Sacket, but Sandy McEachran runs it now. But there's about 10 farms that benchmark there, and you know, you learn more from the tough years and your stuff ups than you do from when things get well, you know. And so I think you really learn some great lessons from those benchmarking groups, and it's a lot of it's financial, but there's also your production benchmarks, you know, what you're producing per hectare and so on. So we've got pretty good ballpark figures on the Monero now, really, I think, for what we're able to produce.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Richard, while I've got you, the last one is asking about how you might have designed your annual sheep program to align with the seasonal feed supply curves. So have you, timed lambing or joining to align with certain times of the year, and are there any challenges with that?
Yeah, look, it's easy for us. Our country on the Monero is all over 1,000 metres. The one season we have certainty over is winter, where we will grow nothing for 100 days. So we don't calve or lamb before September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So we
Thank
spring
you very
lamb
much.
and spring calvers. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Richard. All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of the Q&A section for tonight. So thank you to all our producers for answering those questions as they've come through. So before we conclude tonight's webinar, the QR code that's up on the screen will take you to a feedback form. So we do really appreciate you guys filling this out, as it helps us to plan any new events or webinars, and it helps us to deliver the content that you'd like to see in the future. So if you have time to do that quick feedback form, we'd really appreciate it. I'd also like to remind everyone that this webinar is part of a series. It's a 4-part series, and the next one will be running at the same time next week on Tuesday the 28th. So this session will be focused on cattle. So if you've maybe got some cattle at home as well, this one could be good for you too. So if you'd like to register, that QR code on the bottom right-hand side of the screen will take you to the registration page for that one. And my colleague Kate has also popped the link for that feedback form in the chat. So if you're not a fan of QR codes, you can just click on that one and it will take you through on your web as well. So thanks to everyone for joining tonight, and I'll end the recording now.